Welcome to the Future of Work Live. Hosted by Mark Salisbury, author of the new book, Socrates Digital for Learning and Problem Solving. Each 25-minute episode with Mark and his guests prepares you for the upcoming new world of work.
Welcome to the Future of Work Live. I'm Mark Salisbury, your host. Today, Erica Barreiro will be my guest, and she will discuss the WorktoLearn movement. So right now, we're going to say welcome to Erica. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you so much.
Glad you could be with us today. Okay, for those of you who don't know Erica personally, let me tell you a little bit about her. She's Dr. Erica Barreiro. I knew I was going to do that. Is a future of work strategist at Central New Mexico Community College and acts as an advisor, leader, and contributor to a future-forward college direction. Her work includes building the skills-based learning and work ecosystem, and she's been a leader in related state and national collaborative efforts, such as the Learning Credential Network. And it's a blockchain network for storing and exchanging credentials. And Unbundled, a skills-based marketplace connecting working learners, employers, and community colleges. You know, I probably should have practiced that. So welcome, Erica. Nice to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Mark. Glad to be here today.
Yeah, so, let's just start out with, cut to the chase here, what is the WorktoLearn movement?
Well, the WorktoLearn movement involves a couple of different trends that we're seeing in response to the fact that the traditional system of higher education that we've had for quite some time, where a young person invests in their early career education to get a college degree and then goes to work, is really no longer sufficient anymore to keep up to date with the technological change. And so, and there's a lot of other disruptive factors that are going on in our landscape as well. And so what we're seeing is this emergence of allowing people to go to work first or use their work as learning experiences. And so there is this kind of blending, no longer, well, this is learning and this is working, but rather that learning and working can actually happen at the same time, and that we're seeing more schools, education institutions provide work-based learning experiences, and more employers providing on-site, more structured formal learning experience that complements the work that we are doing. And so, some examples of this is the growth of apprenticeships. Colorado is certainly a state in the USA that's taken a lead on that. We're also seeing more employers who are promoting the opportunity for individuals to advance their education, that they will invest in their education. And I think we're going to see a growing number of people who are looking to the employers to provide on-site learning experiences that help them advance within the organization or even going somewhere else.
Interesting. I've had a little bit of this in my own family. I have a nephew, and he's thinking about computer science as a major. And as you know, I teach computer science, and so I know a little bit about this. But he doesn't know if he wants to go all in and invest, right? And see if he likes it and go off to college and all those things. So he's looking at a program by New York University where it's one of these MOOC-based programs, but they basically do what they call a micro bachelor's degree in computer science. And it's 4 courses, and they're kind of like the backbone of the undergraduate, curriculum in computer science. And so his idea is that he's going to just start taking these courses. And then at the end of this, you're going to have enough skill that you can be hired. And then you're on your way to wherever you're going, right? And so this is very much, one of the things he's thinking about, and thinking about trying to go to school, get prepared, job and not go into debt, right? And so that's all part of this. And it sounds to me like this is something you might be familiar with and you've heard about.
Yeah, it's really a common. We're seeing it more common where people are one. I mean, think about the fact that when you were 18 and going to college, and we had to pick a major, and a lot of times it's like, "Oh, I don't know what I want to do," and yet we're asking people to kind of figure out what they want to do for the rest of their life and invest 4 years. And so, what your nephew is doing is a perfect example of going out and getting some kind of short-term credential that gives you enough skills to move into the field that you think you're interested in, actually experience what that field is like, and either make a decision to continue your career and educational pathway to advance in that field, or discovering, oh wow, this is not what I expected,
Yeah.
and I need to kind of go back and try something else, right?
And I've
So
had
it's
students
a
in my
great
office
example.
that, yeah, and I've had students
Yep.
in my office tell
Right.
me
And
that.
and unfortunately, the way a lot of degrees are currently set up is that you don't discover that until the end of your program, right? Like
Yeah.
certain programs will have that internship experience or work experience, but it doesn't happen until after you've invested 4 years. And by then you feel like, wow, I've got to stay committed to this
Yeah.
because look how much time and money I've already invested in this pursuit.
And something else strikes me when I look at my nephew, and then I look at some of the students that I advise, because we're doing registration right now, right? And so I'm looking at their proposed classes, and it's a good thing. We're a liberal arts school, we got computer science in it, and it kind of makes you a whole person. We got people who are, you're taking theology, you're taking philosophy, you're taking history, you're taking all these other things that enrich your life in so many ways. That's more than job skills. And I look at this and I go, well, my nephew's kind of missing out on that. And then, of course, one of the things we've talked about, if you find your profession, then you can still work on the rest of you, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
an interesting idea that we have, is that we not only have roles as workers in our society, but we have roles as community members. We have civic roles in picking our government. We have so many other things that we can really be informed by other kinds of educational learning experiences beyond, just those. And I think part of that keeps us from doing that is, we do have to get a job at the end of the day. And so, and if that's the only thing you think about, and then, when you go to a school like mine, we make you take the other stuff because we're saying, you're going to want to know this later, right? But maybe we can
Right.
kind of, like they call it, unbundle them, the ideas
Yes.
of all
Yes.
these different aspects of ourselves we're trying to develop. Can we work on them separately? So, what do you think about that?
I think you bring up such an important point. And what I think about is, again, developmentally, where we are at 18. Our frontal cortex in our brain doesn't fully develop until we're like 24 or 25. And because of that, it means that oftentimes, I mean, that element of that piece of our brain is what allows us to do executive higher order thinking. It's what allows us to do long-term planning. And so again, if we think about really when is the right time to put a learning experience in front of someone that helps them understand their role as citizens, that helps them understand the relevancy of why they might study humanities and fine arts in order to be a better citizen. I think at 18, we're telling people you have to take these courses. I think at
Yes.
24 and 25, when we've seen a little bit of the world, we have a greater appreciation and an ability to make the connections between these seemingly kind of theoretical concepts to the world that we are trying to understand and live in.
Yeah, I think that's exactly. I think I was past 25. I was about 50 when my frontal lobe started to finally develop. So, what about the potential upsides of this trend? Now you're seeing this trend. What's the good thing that can happen out of this?
Well, I think you kind of alluded to it before that, the rising cost of secondary education has become a barrier for people really being able to access it or invest in it. And so I think if we start designing systems that chunk learning into smaller increments that are stackable, it allows greater access to different populations to actually, being able to kind of get skills that get them a good paying job that then they can use to help further invest in their education. So I really believe that this movement really does increase access and
Mhm.
equity. I also think that it allows people, we've already again talked about, to try things out
Yeah.
before they're making a commitment to a job that may not be aligned ultimately to their passions and their strengths. I think that that idea of also, we learn best when we get to do it, right? And so the model that we
Mhm.
currently have is learn first and then
Yeah.
do it. And so this blending allows us to say and recognize, like, we need to learn and apply, and they shouldn't be these separate siloed experiences. They should be, continuous and ongoing in a way that people see the relevancy all the time of what they're learning.
Well, that seems like something that would be good for all of us. I think we all have a responsibility to ourselves and the people that have to be around us that we're going to continue to learn, through our lives. And so, what's the potential downside of this? It seems like it's all good to me.
Um, there are a couple things that for different stakeholders are potential downsides. You know, Thinking about higher ed institutions right now, I would argue that they are facing the biggest disruption to the existing model of higher ed. And this is a movement that further potentially disrupts some of the universities and colleges in terms of that pipeline of high school students. Right, we may see more high school students that are not choosing to have that 4 year traditional college experience, but rather are looking for something that allows them to work and learn at the same time. And so that's going to require some real transformation and transition of many colleges. I think the other thing that I think we need to pay attention to is the role of employers and the increasing role of employers in taking on responsibility for learning. And the reason that that has a potential downside, because it has a potential upside too, but the potential downside is that employers are not held to the same kind of requirements that public institutions are
Yeah.
in terms
Yeah.
of ensuring equity and access. So, an example is, as a higher ed institution, I have to make sure learning experiences are accessible to people with disabilities, learning
Yeah.
disabilities. As an employer, I right now don't have that same kind of requirement. And then the last thing I would say that we really need to pay attention to is what are the federal and state policies that we're going to need to put in place that support all employers in offering these work learn experiences. Right now, the big giants are the ones that are kind of able to fund.
Yeah.
We've seen it again with corporate entities, IBM, Walmart, Target. They're the kind of winners right now in the talent game because they have the resources to be able to support this. And yet, America is largely made up of mid to small
Yeah.
businesses. And so, how do we have an ecosystem, a learning ecosystem that provides support that historically has come in the form to institutions of higher ed as financial aid? How do we recognize that and repackage that type of educational aid in ways that might flow to employers or flow directly to the learner and be applied across multiple systems?
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a whole lot of sense. One of the things I also, I spent a tour being in administration at institutions of higher education, so I didn't escape that. But one of the things I thought and I tried to support is this notion that we kind of change how we view what we do for our students. Instead of this Big Bang theory, we come for 4 years and we're good the rest of our lives, that we're more of a support group, a community, and where people learn for a lifetime, right? And they come back and there's professional development. There's all these other things that help us fulfill these roles that we all have in life. And that institutions kind of change the way, that they view what they deliver to society, and especially the time frame and how people can use that. And it strikes me we haven't quite made that threshold yet. We're still talking about, our freshman class looks really small, and next year looks a little smaller, and we don't think about the long haul. And I think gets back to your background in policy. I think there's somehow we need to do this so that institutions of education can kind of take this step together, because if you step out on your own, it's hard to be able to establish the things that you need to do, I think.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that perspective, and really being able to kind of have a collective impact on shaping some of those federal and state policies, those social supports and networks that need to be in place to protect the most vulnerable in the system, in particular, but also to continue to invest in the educational growth of our citizenry, right? Like, we know how critical that is, particularly as we move to what folks are, some folks are calling the fourth industrial revolution, that
Yeah.
the dependency on knowledge professionals, and that role is really going to require a lifetime investment of ongoing learning, rather than just seeing learning as something that happens primarily at the beginning of your career. And so I am heartened by the fact that I see more and more state and federal, as well as business and educational institution conversations about this right now, in that what I call that learning and work ecosystem that is needed for the modern world today.
Yeah, I completely see that. And one of the things, and you probably know this about me, but you might, is I've done a lot of work in the area of technology and people. And I really like that intersection. And one of the things I like to think about is, as we move into the future of work, that we're going to be asked to learn. This is what people do. And we're going to learn the things that don't quite fit into a recipe yet. And as we learn new things, we help inform the entities around us, which we call technology, about what we've learned. And basically, the machines now do the work, and our job is to do the learning. And I think that's kind of our new relationship. And I think it completely fits this conversation we're having today.
Yeah, it also reminds me, Heather McGowan is someone that does a lot of work in future of work, and I believe it was her that said, that today's college graduate can likely anticipate that they will work in 17 different jobs
Yeah.
across 5 different industry sectors, and so just that kind of context for thinking about the way we need to prepare, for me, makes it more essential that our formal education starts shifting away, and we're certainly seeing this, from teaching specific knowledge to really teaching skills, and how you apply those skills, such as learning critical thinking and problem solving, in a variety of contexts that are not just limited to specializing in a certain discipline, because we are going to see an evolution of many jobs that don't exist today, but much more rapidly than we've ever experienced before.
Yeah. And that takes me back to our audience, Erica. People tune in because they want to get some little nugget from us, and that's going to change their lives. So, what can our audience, or how can our audience leverage this trend for advancing their own careers right now?
Yeah, so it's I think been really one interesting phenomena that we've seen as a result of the pandemic is what's called the Great Resignation, right? And that Great
Yeah.
Resignation is reflective of a number of people that are really re-examining the value proposition of work as it relates to their family, as it relates to the purpose and the meaningful work that they want to be engaged in. And so, one of the things that that is resulting in is people are looking for different types of work opportunities. And at the top of the list, as they look for new opportunities, is what is this organization going to do to help me learn and grow?
Yeah.
So, I think if anyone in your audience is at that place, right, it's good to know that many companies are very aware that that is something that people are seeking. And I would be asking either your current organization, or if you're looking for new opportunities, like what is it that you can do right now to help me learn and grow? I think that one of the interesting things I've seen a lot more conversation about having what's called, internal job marketplaces within organizations. And so it's this idea of, you mentioned unbundling of education degrees before. We're also going to be unbundling jobs, which means
Mm.
there are increasing opportunities for people who are in one role to, in an internal job marketplace, to actually say, I'd really like to learn skills around data. I would like to learn skills around human resources. And some of these companies that have set up these internal marketplaces are giving employees the opportunity that would never have had the opportunity before to do work inside of another division or organization to actually gain experience in that, which may ultimately just make them better at the jobs that they currently have,
Mhm.
or create opportunities for them to move laterally within the company, which to date has generally been limited, right? Kind of once you get yourself in a particular career ladder, you either go up or you don't,
Yeah.
right? And there's not been a lot of movement. I heard someone talk about across the career jungle gym. And so companies are really looking for those opportunities to create that career jungle gym. And I would say, as an employee and a worker, I would be proactive in looking for those
Yeah.
opportunities, even if they're not formalized inside of your organization, to be talking to your supervisor and asking, what are the opportunities that I can find in our organization through formal education or informal education, through those work-based learning experiences that can be supported while
Yeah.
I'm doing my job.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Since we're 25 minutes, Erica, we're coming in for a landing now. So our takeaway, and I kind of tried to put this together, is the work to learn movement can advance education and careers for many Americans and actually grow our economy. So do you want to expand on that just a little bit so people have something to take away with them?
Sure. I mean, I think, this just captures a lot of the themes that we've been talking about. And that the more opportunities we are providing people while they're working to learn and advance, the better we benefit. I know some companies have been concerned about this idea of, well, if I invest in an individual, in their education, and then they're going to leave, right? They're going to
Yeah.
leave and find this other opportunity because they're not going to stay with my company for more than 3 to 5 years. But if we start recognizing that it's that collective, right, effort that actually forwards the economic well-being of the community as a whole, when we are investing in our people, I think that we will actually see that investment pay back in dividends.
Oh, very good. Well, thanks for being with us today, Erica. I just want to point out to our audience that you can connect with Erica Barreiro on LinkedIn for more on the future of work and learning. So thank you for being with us and bringing a little bit of fresh air to this program. We certainly appreciate it. And for those folks that are now just thinking about tuning out, remember that our next episode is Wednesdays. It's always on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Central Time. We'll see you then.